This video is a little bit different than what I normally do. It is an honest tutorial giving tips and tricks and explaining some of my strategies while mining in the new Minecraft 1.18 plus caves. Because I've had some people that I've played with seemingly struggle with these caves, and I typically don't seem to have a problem with them. So I want to hopefully alleviate some of the pain that these caves may be causing by showing off some of the tricks that I normally use to stay alive in these caves. So what you're about to see is a director's commentary explaining my thought process and actions in different situations in the caves. So right off the bat here, you can see me going for coal, which is, of course, the most important ore when you're mining because you're going to need it for all your torches. And since I'm starting from absolute scratch here, I don't have the benefit of being able to bring a bunch with me, so it's very important at the beginning to try and grab as much as possible. You can see me here going up this waterfall and making a bridge to get over to this piece of coal that's all the way up on a wall. But I'm also simultaneously going for that iron that you could just see in the top right. Also, while you're caving, it's obviously beneficial to have a lot of, just garbage blocks you can use to pillar up to something or bridge across a ravine. So in the early game, I often opt to dig into the wall and carve out a path up to where I'm going, as opposed to using the blocks I have to bridge over. That way I can also collect more blocks that I can use in the future at the same time as the ore. So with this iron that I've collected, all smelted, the best first thing to craft is a chest plate, as it's the most armor you can get from one piece. So now that I'm down in a big cave and there's a zombie here, I want to point out something that I always do and that I feel like other people tend to not do, or rather that they don't really think of, is that they are faster than the mobs no matter what. There's no mob that's faster than you when you run. So it doesn't matter how many monsters are in the cave, you can just run past everything. If you can brush right past a creeper, and even if it explodes, if you're sprinting and jumping, you'll already be long gone out of range for it to hurt you. So to prevent further mobs from spawning while you have to deal with all of them in a big room, I will run past everything and light up the whole cave so that we've essentially locked in the amount of mobs that are in this room, and then we can start dealing with them afterwards. So here I've encountered a skeleton, which is by far the most deadly mob that you're going to face, even more deadly than a creeper. Creepers are quite easy compared to skeletons because of the simple fact that they're ranged. And of course, being the very early game, I have almost no armor and I have no good tools, so I don't feel like I'm ready to just charge at it. And I decided to go down to get a hit to try to knock it away from me, and which is successful. But he's able to land a couple more shots on me. Not knowing what to do, I decide to build myself into a little box to keep myself temporarily protected. This is another thing that I feel not enough people do, is they seem to think that they need to be brave. Especially in the early game, that's exactly the opposite. From monsters, I will almost every time just dig myself in to try to deal with skeletons because it's the most efficient way. So you see here I coax in a skeleton by shifting so that he can get into my line of sight, and then I continually back away from the edge and I strike at his ankles until he's gone. We have another situation where I try to block him in, but I do it wrong, and he can shoot me, but I can't shoot him. So what I do is I go really close to the edge so that there's a good line of sight for me, but not for him. And I can slash at just the side of him, and he can't get me, and I'm able to take him down. So now when dealing with the creeper, the best way to take them out is just a touch-and-go method, where you just strike them once and then run away or hide behind a corner. And you just keep doing that over and over again, and you can keep resetting their explode timer, and you can take them down quite easily. In this skeleton encounter, I noticed that one of them shot the other one, which I knew would lead to a fight between them, and instead of interrupting them and trying to kill them, I let them finish and let one of the skeletons kill the other one so that I can then take down the last remaining, now weakened skeleton. Here we have another skeleton encounter where, even though I have the high ground, which is what you want when you're dealing with a skeleton, I don't have a bow, so it's essentially meaningless to me. So I create a structure to block myself in, and I'm able to create another line of sight that's good for me and bad for him, and I'm able to take him down easily. Here I can hear the zombie, but I can't see it, so I remain more vigilant than I would normally. And when I hear that he's dropped down, I obviously turn to try to take him out, but I've also made a mental note that he specifically fell down from somewhere. And after I've killed the zombie, I take note of where he fell and deal with it by just plugging it up just to prevent any other mobs from falling in the future. So now that it's time to craft more torches, I only craft one stack to put in my offhand, and I don't craft any more to just keep in my inventory because it's kind of a waste of space if I'm not using them. The biggest point that I forgot to make earlier was that I've backed myself into a corner so that I know I cannot be attacked from behind. I do this all the time for anything. If I have to stop and do anything like eat or craft something or just like change my inventory around, anything like that, anything that requires me to stop, I will basically dig myself into the wall or at least go up against a corner so that I know nothing can possibly hit me from behind, just to eliminate any possible directions of threat. You'll also notice that I'm acting quite cautiously while I'm moving through this ravine because these are by far the most dangerous cave in the game because of all the little tiny ledges way up high at the top of the cave, and you'll just have a random creeper fall down on you. So you really want to make sure that there's nothing up there when you can move safely. Here I encounter a full iron skeleton, which is incredibly rare, and especially for the early game where the difficulty hasn't even risen yet. And I also encounter a silverfish, which after killing it, I immediately stop and wait to see if any more are going to spawn because they're like zombies and that they can summon more around them, and you can very quickly be swarmed, and I wanted to be on guard for that. As I now move on to take out the skeleton, I know that from where I am, I'm not going to be able to do it, and so I opt to sneak around it, and so I could get more of a better position on it. So after alerting him towards me, I figure that the best way of taking him out is going to be to charge him and to stay as close as possible to him, because the farther away you are from an arrow, the more damage it does, and if you're at point blank, it essentially does no damage. So if you stay as close as possible to a skeleton, you can take minimal damage while just swinging endlessly on him. In this clip, it's this very small thing, but I basically default to holding my sword all the time in case there's a mob coming. So as soon as I'm done eating my food, I switch immediately back to my sword, and I stay on my sword for as much time as possible while I'm caving. So in this situation, I have two zombies and a skeleton I'm trying to deal with, and in an attempt to try to sneak around them and go below them, I happen to break into a flooded cave, which I then try to use the water to wash some of them away. And after I've seen that one of the zombies has been washed away, I use this as my chance to strike, and I jump down and immediately go for the skeleton, the most dangerous mob.
It was at this moment Jackson knew. He fucked up.
In this situation, I try to do what I've done before and block in myself so that I can get a good angle on the skeleton, but he moves way too quickly around my barrier, and I decide to just bum rush him and try to take him out as fast as possible, and getting as close as possible to him. While I'm mining this iron, I hear a zombie, which basically startles me, and I switch to third-person mode so that I could see if anything is going to sneak up on me, and fortunately, these zombies that I hear are behind a wall, so it's no worry. While I'm mining this lapis lazuli, I'm actually looking up at that dark cave quickly to make sure that there's nothing up there that's going to drop down behind me while I'm in this hole. Here, as I'm approaching what appears to be a large room full of monsters, I pause for a moment and eat to make sure that I can have the max regen. Fortunately, though, this room had no mobs and they were in somewhere else. As I'm entering this room, I'm immediately scanning the entire room for movement, basically like a T-Rex, and I see that there's a skeleton, and I know I'm just going to have to take it out later. You want to make sure you know what you're up against before you go charging into a room. Here I come across my first diamonds of the mining trip, and so in preparation of mining them, I do a quick survey of the area to make sure there's nothing around that can get me, and before mining them, I mine next to it to see that there's nothing below it, and in this case there's air. So I place a block so that I can for sure pick it up as it's going to fall otherwise. If there was lava below there, I would have caught it and it wouldn't have mattered. In this clip I come across a skeleton dungeon, and so after rushing the skeleton and killing him as quickly as I can, I light up the spawner as quickly as I can to make sure that nothing else can spawn and I'm safe to take the loot. Shortly after the skeleton dungeon, I find a zombie dungeon as well, and while fighting some of the zombies spawned from it, I am snuck up on by one from behind, and after he gets a couple hits, I work to try to get both of the zombies that I'm fighting in front of me so that I'm not fighting from two sides. Here we have a long clip of me clearing this entire giant room, because I feel like this is what most people's experiences with caves are. It's a giant room full of mobs, and I just want to show that it's not that big of a struggle to try to clear these giant rooms. So first of all, as I've said multiple times before, you are faster than the mobs, so even though there's skeletons and zombies and creepers everywhere, I'm just running past and doing my best to strafe to the left or right instead of moving just forward and backwards away from the skeleton so that I can dodge most of their arrows. And I'm just placing as many torches as I can to get the room lit up so that nothing else can spawn around me, and I know that all the mobs in the room are all that I'm going to have to deal with. Now that I've lit up the whole room and all that's left to do is kill all the mobs in it, I want to show my other favorite strategy for dealing with skeletons, and that's to always make sure that I have easier to kill mobs between the skeleton and me to basically act as a human shield. Next, the creepers are quite easy. As I said before, it's just touch and go. Hit them once, run away, hit them once, run away. It's pretty standard. They're pretty easy to kill. Now that the room is relatively safe, I've started to mine the ores. And when I'm mining this gold, I basically do a check around me in third person to make sure that there's nothing that's going to drop down on me. Now that I've mined these diamonds, it's time to make an enchantment table with the obsidian that I mined earlier and the book that I brought down with me. And before taking off all my armor to enchant it, I do a quick scan around me to make sure that nothing's going to come sneaking up on me. And I'm pretty sure I'm safe, so I take it all off to enchant it. And usually I go for just protection on everything, because unbreaking is kind of useless. You want to be as protected as possible down here. If you can, also go for projectile projection, because skeletons are the most dangerous mob that you are going to face, so it's good to be protected against them. Here I kind of made a mistake. I went for unbreaking on my diamond pick. I should have gone for efficiency, just to make mining the deep slate easier. But for everything, for my first enchantments, I usually just go for, you know, the basic protection 1, efficiency 1, sharpness 1, or power 1. Just make my tools a tiny bit better. I don't care about them lasting longer yet. Now here I actually happened to run into a huge deep dark section of this cave, and I considered going into it a little bit, but I noticed that there was a shrieker right there, and I was like, nah, I'm not dealing with a warden, not in this video. But now that I have a bow, I can show off how I use it. I don't typically use it as a main weapon. I use it only when I have no other option and I have some dead time. So I shoot one shot at him because he's far away, and since he fell and I was able to get one shot on him, I only had to kill him with one hit. So here I found diamonds, and so because it's diamonds, I do a little bit of an extra look around to make sure there's nothing. And I'm also highlighting that you should always mine extra stone around your ores, because here I was able to find 4 extra diamonds that weren't connected to the other one. So in this clip, just to do some multitasking, I know I'm going to want to go down to explore that lava section, so I just place a water bucket to go and turn all the lava into obsidian while I'm mining this iron. So at this point in the video, I basically have nothing else to highlight from my little caving trip that I did. And now, besides a couple other extra ores that I managed to gather, I began trying to make my way out of the cave. And by digging up, I eventually reached this cave that I was in previously, where I had at one point dug through the side of the wall and found a water cave. And since back then I recognized that there was kelp at the bottom of the cave, I knew that that meant it was connected to the ocean, and I knew I could use this as a quick escape. And that's exactly what I did. I remembered it, I broke through, and then I swam up to the surface to where I was safe.